Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. Giving peace a chance. This may or may not be the case when it comes to the fate of Syria. After almost a year, a Russian peace plan to end the civil war is being reconsidered. The idea is simple: no preconditions, and all parties have a seat at the negotiating table. Are the U.S. and its Gulf allies serious, or is this a ploy to merely intensify the conflict? To crosstalk Russia, Syria, and Israel, I'm joined by my guests in Washington. Ariel Cohen, he's a senior fellow in Russian and Eurasian Studies and International Energy Security at the Heritage Foundation. And Nabil Mikhail, he is a political analyst and a professor at the George Washington University. All right, gentlemen, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want. Ariel, what accounts for the flip-flop, the American flip-flop? Now they're going for the Russian plan or something like it. What do you think about that?
Well, Winston Churchill said that Americans can be counted upon to come to the best option after they tried everything else. I think the United States missed an opportunity to reinforce and support moderate anti-Assad forces. The center collapsed. We ended up with extremists from the Muslim Brotherhood all the way to Al-queda affiliated Jabal Nusra front. These are no good options today in Syria, and Hezbollah is getting into the fray. So the United States is trying to give it a shot. It is not a ploy to derail the process. Unfortunately, I want our viewers to understand the United States is not calling the shots on this. There are other players. There's Russia, there's Iran,
there's Qatar,
there is Saudi Arabia, and
Iran,
Qatar.
a lot of people.
Qatar. So, yes. And this is not something like President Obama just pushing the button and everything falls into its place. This is a mess, and it's a bloody mess. And I hope and I pray for the sake of people in Syria that a good solution would be found. I'm pessimistic as usual. Peter, you know me, but it's the Middle East.
Okay, now, Bill, what do you think about Ariel's analysis there? Are you just as pessimistic?
No, I'm quite the opposite. I'm very optimistic, and I think if Washington and Moscow are serious about peace in Syria, they will have the primacy. They will play a prominent role, bigger than any other nation. I think my point of departure is the Suez Crisis analogy. In October-November 1956, Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal. The British and the French, as temporary owners of it for some time, objected. Then they attacked Egypt on October 31st, 1956. Eisenhower, who was up for re-election, rebuked the British and the French. And Nikolai Bulganin, the prime minister, issued an ultimatum against England and France. And the two countries worked sincerely and close enough to end the Suez Crisis. Many people will object, and they say that Assad is not like Nasser in 1956, but actually, despite the dissimilarities, there are many meeting points that could be exploited and utilized fully for a better outcome for the sake of peace in Syria. If Washington and Moscow are on the same wavelength, I think they can start a long transition period. And let me put more emphasis on the word a long transition period, because elections will not happen soon in Syria. You have to have a long transition period, otherwise you will end up in a political stalemate. So let us be serious about it.
Better a political stalemate than a war. Ariel, let me go to you. This is a proxy war now. Who's controlling the proxies? It's out of control now.
Yes, it is a proxy war to a great extent, but what Nabil's neat model doesn't address is the religious factor and the multiple players. Yes, in 1956 we had nation states. Moscow could talk to Nasser, and Washington could talk to Paris and London. Today you have to talk to militia commanders. You have to talk to Qataris and Iranians. It is a more chaotic system with many more fanatical players. Nation states usually are guided by their national interests. And in this case, I think U.S. and Russia are rational players. However, when you look at these militias, be it Hezbollah or Jabhat al-Nusra, these are not necessarily rational players. In many cases, these are ideological fanatics. And this complicates the situation very much.
No, but what do you think about that? I mean, because we have this news report of a military commander, a militant, eating the heart of a soldier on the ground. I mean, who's controlling these guys?
Ouch.
Who's controlling these guys? Now, Bill, go ahead.
This is cannibalism. It's very ugly. I mean, basically, it is they are controlled by their zealous emotions, but this should not intimidate two big powers with nuclear arsenals and heavy conventional armaments from stopping and even fully wiping out militias, because even the militias, as you said, are tied to a proxy war.
Nobody's going to use nukes.
And just let me finish.
Nobody's going to use nukes, and nobody's going to intervene with soldiers on the ground.
That's a very marginal point. I mean, they have a lot of intelligence agents. They have their own clients. They have the regime of Assad. They have Israel. They can talk to the proxy agents or the states that are employing these militias. The militias could be wiped out. The Suez Crisis actually was a conflict rife with militia fighting in Sinai and across the Suez banks. So I think if there is a serious dedication between Moscow and Washington, that should start a long-term political process whereby many factions can be demilitarized, can be departed, and peace or a serious peace talk can start in Syria.
Okay, Ariel, I mean, this is such a bloody conflict now. Who's just going to put their guns down? Who's just going to put them down? Say, let's sit around the table and have some tea.
Exactly, but
come on.
I have another and more tragic model to my sorrow, because I lived in Israel when that thing was happening, and that is a 15-year-long Lebanon war. There were proxies, but there were militias, and there were community hatreds between the Christians and the Muslims, between the Druze and others, between the Sunni and the Shia, and then Syria and Israel got involved, and then the United States got involved. So I am afraid that until the thing burns out from within, until these people get exhausted, nobody is going to threaten nuclear weapons here.
What about the Saudis?
Yes.
Are the Saudis going to cool down on this? Are they going to cool down on this? Are they going to sit down at the table?
I wish I could tell you.
Well, would they rationally do it?
I wish I could tell you. Peter, you asked a question. Let me answer.
Go ahead.
I wish I could tell you that the United States could just pick up the phone to the King of Saudi Arabia and stop Saudi support of Salafi, jihadi, Wahhabi factions in that war. Unfortunately, the Saudis are flush with cash. They have so much money, just like the Qataris. They support their own militia, and the Qataris support the other militias. So you have a confrontation and a proxy war, not just between the Sunnis and the Shias, not just between the Saudis and the Iranians or the Qataris and the Iranians, but between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And a lot of people don't understand that that confrontation has nothing to do with the United States. It is a local Arabian Peninsula conflict between brothers, essentially. And that is another factor, that particular conflict is going on and plays out as a proxy war in Syria, just like there is a proxy war between Iran and the Saudis on the other hand.
Now, Bill, do you want to jump in there? I think Ariel just spelled the word mess.
Yes, I'm glad also that he pointed out to the Lebanese civil war, because this is very relevant. Look, everyone knows that the conflict is a mess. everyone needs the Middle East oil. Syria is not an oil-producing country, but it's important because it is at the heart of so many cross-currents in the Middle East. China will not resolve the Syrian crisis. Only concerted effort by the Russian Federation and the United States of America. Also, Israel is a player, and let me just try to elucidate on the Israeli role. Israel said that she's not part to the conflict, but it bombed Syria. In fact, actually, Israel is not, for the first time, a direct part to a conflict that is unraveling in a neighboring nation. And I have two examples to provide to the viewers. In 1970, King Hussein of Jordan faced an uprising by the Palestinians. Israel did not intervene, but it was hoping that the Hashemite monarch can extend his sovereignty over the Palestinians, and Jordan can be or could be the Palestinian state, and the conflict could end. So here Israel had basically assigned one party to the conflict whom they were hoping for his victory. In 1982, in the middle of the complex denominational and sectarian web of relations in Lebanon, Syria deployed missiles in the Bekaa Valley in northeast Lebanon. Menachem Begin bombed the missile sites. So here Israel was hoping that a reduced Syrian role could still help make Lebanon function. But in Syria, where you have a sectarian conflict, a regional conflict, an Arab rivalry, a Turkish-Arab rivalry, and different forms of contest.
We forgot
Israel
Turkey. Turkey is
cannot assign
important.
any side. Sure, Israel cannot find any side whom they can secure their loyalty. So,
all right, gentlemen,
Israel
I have to jump in here. We're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue more discussion on Syria. Stay with RT. Okay, Ariel, I'd like to go back to you and talk about Israel and all of this. I mean, okay, we had a Cold War, for 40 years, the Israelis and Syria. And, you know, it's been there, and they've been able to manage it. But now we have the case where Syria could disappear. Is that good or bad for Israel?
I think it's very bad for Israel. First of all, the Golan Front enjoyed a ceasefire since 1974. The people were not killing each other there. There was a war in Lebanon. It was a bloody war. Israel lost about 900 people there, which for a small country is a lot. Our family lost friends. But at the same time, there was a semblance of balance. And there was an address. When the Syrians from Israel's perspective got out of line, Israeli planes could go in and buzz the presidential palace or destroy a nuclear reactor that President Assad was building back in 2006. Today, if Syria disintegrates and there is a strong pro-Al-Qaeda component, then Israel may be surrounded by Al-Qaeda affiliates both in Sinai and Hamas in Gaza, and Hezbollah, as long as it lasts in Lebanon, although I would argue that if Syria goes Sunni, Hezbollah sooner or later will disappear.
Well, do you think, is that what it's all about?
Weaker.
Is it all about Iran and Hezbollah, Ariel, not about the Syrian people?
It is about the Syrian people and their suffering, but at the same time, Iran stuck its fingers there, and Iran is the funder and the creator of Hezbollah. The head of Hezbollah, Mr. Nasrallah, has a title of a representative of the Iranian supreme leader in Lebanon.
Okay, but
it's
Hezbollah
official. I'm not telling you any secrets here.
Democratically elected. I don't want to go down this path here. Now, Bill, go ahead.
I think you are oversimplifying the Syrian conflict, because Syria will never disintegrate for so many reasons. Syria is such a big historical entity, and it could basically, its geography could be redefined, but it will never disappear, because you will have a Syrian entity one way or the other on the map.
Or you could have a very, or you could have a very weakened Syria, also. That's a possibility.
This is possible, but here is my reply. There is no room for brinkmanship like 1982, the missiles crisis. The Syrian conflict now is a zero-sum game, an all-out conflict, and no side is willing to risk its reputation or its defense to dissolve Syria. This is a major problem and a mistake by Obama. He wanted Turkey to play a big role, but Erdogan does not want it, neither is the military in Turkey. So how come that you are talking about an enlarged conflict whereby some major players are reluctant to be active? The Israelis and the Turkeys and gradually the Egyptians are very much willing to stop and contain the conflict. As a matter of fact, in a new development, Egypt now is preferring a gradual solution.
Okay, Ariel?
Egypt is preferring a gradual solution.
Yeah, Nabil, with all due respect to Egypt, Egypt needs first to put its house in order. It's an economic mess. It's a political mess. And if a solution comes, I agree with you, it will come from the U.S. and Russia talking to Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. As you pointed out correctly, Israel does not want another war now. And what is in Israel's prime concern is for Hezbollah not to get these long-range, powerful missiles it was getting when Israel decided to strike. And these were pinpointed strikes. This was not against the Syrian population. And for that matter, it wasn't against the regime.
Or maybe
they didn't attack the Ministry of Defense.
Israel was just making a point that it's there and it's very powerful. Now, Bill, go ahead.
Well, Israel was making a point that Hezbollah should not get game-changing missiles. That's the point.
Now, Bill, go ahead. Go ahead, Nabil. You want to react to that? Nabil, you want to react to that?
Yes, let me just continue the discussion on Egypt. Kerry definitely is different than Hillary, because Hillary supported the military option, and Kerry also is different than Obama because Obama is indifferent toward the Syrian crisis. So you have an activist or a gradually activist American diplomatic role championed by the Secretary of State. But I have to juxtapose Syria to Egypt. The United States government will not change the regime in Egypt because of the conflict in Syria.
I want to go back to earlier. I want to stay. I'm sorry, Nabil. I want to stay with Syria here. Ariel, you said you were pessimistic. I mean, but that's an interesting ploy. You could say, well, we tried peace. We tried, didn't we? We tried to have a conference. That's what I meant by ploy in the beginning of the program.
Well, first of all, I think conferences are great, especially in a place like Geneva. The scenery is great. It's a great photo op for the respective ministers of foreign affairs. The question is the Syrian opposition going to be there? Did anybody consult the Syrian opposition before they decided to have that peace conference? And I also noticed that Jordanians are inviting the Friends of Syria, the so-called Friend of Syria group, to Amman, and it's not clear whether the Syrian government is going to play. So I think this is a good moment to try and find a solution. I'm very nervous about an extremist Sunni
yeah, but are you,
Sunni,
are you surprised by this? Are you surprised by any of this? Giving these people arms and support and money? I mean, come on. Everyone's been talking about this for a year, and now it's finally happened. Wow, big surprise.
Well, first of all, I think giving arms to people who are of the same persuasion as the forces that killed the American ambassador in Libya, as the forces that the West supported in Libya,
and look what happened to Libya. Look what we did to Libya.
Are.
You know, really.
Exactly. And,
these interventions don't work.
Therefore, Peter, what I said in the beginning, it's a tragic situation because from my point of view, there are no good people, there are no good forces to support. And if there were good people and good forces, the moderate forces in Syria, we missed that train. The Obama administration did not go in forcefully and supported the anti-Assad forces.
How would you have done that, Ariel? With arms, with boots? What? How?
first of all, you had to understand the field. You had to understand who is who. And they did not have a clear idea. I think Nabil is right. President Obama is very nervous to commit to yet another big Middle Eastern intervention. And the Europeans are weak. The Europeans have been weak for a long time. And the Russians don't want to send their troops there. No. So who is going to police it? Who is going to police it? Is there going to be an Arab force that the Syrians will accept as a policing force?
Well,
maybe
if they stopped getting money and arms, they would stop fighting. That's a start.
Well, but then the question is, well, it's not that they're fighting. It's also the issue of the Assad regime shooting at its own people and killing its own people. Let's not put it under the rug right now.
Okay.
It is not a nice
Nabil,
regime.
Let me go. We're almost out of time. Nabil, is it a good idea for the United States to say a leader should go when he can't back it up?
No, it's not a mistake, because I mean, America and Russia are mighty nations and they can really force a change. But as I said earlier, and I was interrupted, America is looking to the situation this way. Syria is very unstable and Egypt is very unstable. So if there is an active American role in Syria, it will be gradual, methodical, because you cannot afford having two unstable situations in two big countries.
Are Americans welcome there? Yes, now, Bill, are Americans welcome there in Syria? Do you know the answer to that? If
they have a focused goal in collaboration with the international community, they can play a positive role. I mean, protocol will not really fulfill all the duties. But again, you have to make strategic choices. Syria is unstable, so as Egypt, and you are looking into or adopting a regional perspective. So go slow down in making changes in these two countries, including the future of Mr. Assad.
Okay, what about Assad? That's a good point.
That's
a good point. Ariel, what about Assad?
Well, first of all, I noticed that Nabil did not say that Assad should stay. I agree. The question is, can we come to a solution that will stop the fighting, and there will be some kind of a coalition government or technocratic government, and I hate to say it, but maybe something approaching the government and the system in Iraq. In the retrospect,
wow.
I'm not in.
Well,
yeah, but because once you get the dictator out, and let's face it, folks, Bashar al-Assad is a dictator, and his father is a dictator. One of the reasons that there is so much fighting there is that the majority Sunni population does not accept the Alawi Ba'ath Party dictatorship without any legitimacy. They wasted their legitimacy.
Western imperialism in play again. Nabil, you got the last word. Go ahead.
What about the Western imperialism? Where does that came from?
Come on. Nabil, go ahead.
I think Russia is trying to rehabilitate Syria, and the best way to do it is jointly with America and by preserving the territorial integrity of Russia. Syria is not the former Yugoslavia, where the dissolution of the entities can establish peace. Russia and America can play an opposite role that followed the end of the Cold War. They are mature. They are having mature diplomacy. They can work together to preserve
absolutely
the integrity
fascinating
of
discussion.
Syria.
We have run out of time. I wish we had a lot more. Many thanks today to my guests in Washington, and thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.
I love you.